Thank you both. That was so excellent. But the assistant kind of stepped on my line here. You guys already know what's coming up next. It's Veda, and they're going to be discussing tokenizing the yield, right? Big stuff for us here. Now, everyone here probably uses Sonic, right? I'm assuming. So if you've used Rings protocol, you've used Veda's boring vault. So this should be a very informative panel or fireside chat, if you will, for you. So I hope you all get a lot of good information out of this. I know I will. So we're going to bring the assistant back on stage, as well as AJ, the head of BD from Veda. So could be some alpha for us. Welcome, assistant and AJ. You're great, AJ. Hey, welcome back, dude. I haven't seen you before. Oh.
No see. Long time no see. Okay, so thank you for that question before. And it's actually pretty ironic, but it's perfect because what you're asking exactly what Veda does. And it's exactly what we're here to talk about, which is tokenized yield, and kind of discussing the overall DeFi yield landscape. And that has a lot to do with opportunity cost, has a lot to do with bridging risk, smart contract risk, asset issuer risk, speed. When I say speed, I just mean yield doesn't last forever, so you need to be constantly monitoring the market and say hey, we need to move assets here. And that's something that we have a lot of conversations with not Veda, actually with Veda, but with Rings. Rings on Sonic is using Veda as the backend kind of infrastructure provider for that yield layer. So maybe the best way to start is just introduce Veda a little bit, and then we can talk about how Veda is being used on Sonic, how Veda is being used in general, and kind of go through those risk profiles that I had just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm AJ. I lead BD at Veda. Veda is a leading vault infrastructure provider. We operate across a number of EVM chains. We're currently the largest vault infrastructure provider in the space.
It's 2.5 billion?
Yeah, it's 2.45 billion in TVL at the moment. We launched last year with one of our core partners, EtherFi. Veda has always operated as a B2B DeFi project as well. So when we work with someone like Sonic or Rings, we are building a bespoke, curated yield product from the ground up to suit whatever their strategic goals are over the next 6 months. So we work with the ecosystem teams to determine what strategies we're going to be deploying into and what ecosystems we're kind of trying to boost in that process. But over the last year, we've had a lot of growth, which has been exciting. So mentioned the TVL number, but yeah, we're some of the largest on-chain capital allocators at this point. So one of the largest users of Aave, the largest trader by P&L on Pendle. We do a ton of volume in stablecoin and LST.
Yeah, you guys have a pretty big network. I mean, anytime myself or Sam meet with liquidity providers or even institutions, they bring up Veda. What I mean is that you guys have definitely made the name known, and the technology, the boring vaults and everything behind it, is something that it's become kind of a household name. So I think that you guys being on Sonic was pretty interesting timing because there's a lot of yield opportunities out there, and specifically the protocol that we mentioned earlier, Rings, that's essentially what Rings does. So there's no one here from Rings, or there is another day, but we can I'll just go over it quickly. So Rings is essentially an application that has multiple facets built in regards to VE33 tokenomics and also yield farming, where capital is deployed essentially wherever the yield is. And what we like to call Rings is a vampire protocol. And why we say it's a vampire protocol is because you're able to farm on Sonic simultaneously while the underlying capital is deployed through Veda on other chains. So let's say, for example, I'll give one good example actually, and it's an ongoing strategy, and I think it's perfectly okay to talk about another chain in this sense. Normally I wouldn't talk about another chain, but now this is why Rings exists and why Veda exists, is there's really high yield on a chain, Unichain. And I think right now they have around 11 or to 10% yield on a USDT 0 and a USDC pool. So when I see that, it's ouch, that's a lot of yield, that's pretty good. How do we extract that yield and take it back to Sonic? Simple. We use Rings, we work with Rings, we work with Veda. Veda will take the AUM where SCUSD holders on Sonic, the underlying stable coins are then taken, put into boring vaults, and then deployed on Unichain. Then, periodically, the yield of the Uni is then liquidated and essentially vampire attacking any chain, whether it's a new chain, an old chain, anyone who has any form of incentives. We take all of the yield and we bring all of the yield back to Sonic in form of rewards to bootstrap our ecosystem. The reason why this exists is simple. I don't think that chains will ever stop raising venture capital, and I think everyone here agrees with that. The VC gauntlet will never stop, and chains that shouldn't be raising or have very poor tech or have bad teams or whatever, they will continue raising. And when they do raise, perfect opportunity. They have incentives. Exactly. They're trying to get people to come to their chain. But hey, so are we. So what do? Work with Veda. We go through this kind of interesting conversation where, as I mentioned before, is the coin safe that we're deploying into? Like, let's just use that pool as an example. Is USDT 0 issue? Is it safe? What is the profile of the token? Is it native? Is it not native? USDC. What's the risk of it? Is it native? Is it not native? What kind of pool is it? Is it concentrated liquidity? Is there like some weird impermanent loss situation? What is the application? Oh, okay, it's Uniswap, has a good reputation, has history, has significant amounts of capital deposited in those pools. Can the pool scale? Is the pool have 500 APR, but it's only $10 in there? Or is the pool at size? Does the pool have 100 million TVL, is holding sustainable APRs, and can absorb us Rings depositing $20 to $30 million via Veda? And what we do at Sonic Labs in particular is we work with Rings and we work with Veda to give our opinion on whether or not these vaults are considered to be viable. And the reason we do that is because it directly affects our users. And we are whitelisting the assets via Rings powered by Veda for points. So if we're going to have points on something, we want to make sure that we at least are doing some level of due diligence in the sense of we're looking at the strategies. If I had a conversation with the team at Rings or at Veda, I said, hey, we're going to deposit $10 million of user funds into this new RWA stablecoin that's backed by potatoes, and we really think it's safe, and we're going to move the money instantly. We would be like,
Yeah, exactly. I think risk is at the forefront of everything we build.
Yeah.
And as I touched on earlier, we build everything bespoke with a partner. So as you mentioned, we have this Merkle verification system where essentially the vault can't do any action outside of these whitelisted actions. So whether that's deleveraging, rebalancing, depositing and withdrawing from various DeFi protocols, that's all done in collaboration with the Rings and Sonic team as well.
Yep.
So we can't take funds and sort of go rogue in the DeFi ecosystem. And that's one of the many safeguards we have in place to ensure that the surface area for any attack is minimal. And I think we've had that security-first approach since day one. From a user perspective, you're only ever exposed to depositing and withdrawing from a vault. Then we introduced the Merkle verification system to ensure that the routes are all safe, and it's all whitelisted protocols. And historically, we have operated mainly with the blue chip DeFi protocols.
Yeah.
And that's just from the risk perspective as well. And even when we first launched Rings, we initially had a threshold, that's changed now, but initially our thresholds were it has to have 100 million TVL.
Yeah.
It has to be live for 6 months before we'd even
Well, you guys are also really looking into audits, on your of the applications on your, because I remember
of course, yeah.
On our side, I'm more than happy to give an example because this is a fact, is when Silo had first launched, we had incentivized, there was yield there. And I'm like, you guys, let's try and figure something out. Let's start getting, and they're like, we need to finish the audit. So I respect any team that takes pressure from a foundation. I mean, for us, we don't know the level of auditing that the application has, how fresh their audit is, whether the vaults are new or if the last commits are more recent. But working with you guys has been really smooth in the sense of you're kind of digging in to see the reality of the audits and do
totally.
your own audits on top of it.
Yeah, we're extremely thorough on that side of things. So the Boring Vault, which was pioneered by Veda, it's now the definitive vault standard in DeFi. That's been audited more than nearly any other contract in the space, and it's actually functioning at scale. So we'll do our own internal audits, we'll get a third-party auditor in, but then also the teams that we are building products for, like Sonic, Rings, EtherFi, Lombard, they will often like commission a third-party audit as well.
Yeah.
So everyone who's sort of touching the vault is auditing it, which is great. And then I guess that's the smart contract side. But then when you think about allocating capital, which is the other half of our job ultimately, we do our own internal audit on any yield sources that we're leveraging. We also have a third-party auditor who comes in to assess like, oh, is ShadowDex safe? Is Silo safe, etc. And that just means we have a really robust risk framework and can often just like pivot and keep users principal and funds safe at the end of the day.
Well, so far it's going well, and I mean, on our side, we have nothing but great feedback from people. I think that the Rings protocol is like a new primitive, so it's still being improved. And I think the question that Stefan had asked was something about like how do high throughput blockchains and work with yield farming. Was that correct? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that it's hard to answer that question, but it's something that they're very familiar with, which is you can wake up and see there's high yield and then go to sleep and it's gone. And why does that happen is because usually there's just like a scarcity of yield opportunities depending on like what point in the market it is. It's not very common that you can, well, actually, I'll say it's common to find yield in DeFi, but it's uncommon to find yield where people will just deposit without question.
Of course, right. And I think how we're approaching this is that we have a very good lay of the land with regards to like on-chain DeFi yields, borrow lend, XLP, and yield trading, etc. And our vaults can do any action outside of maybe like MEV. But we are like exploring other yield sources at this point in time in terms of like, okay, how could we introduce a carry trade or a basis trade or do some like arbitrage within like the vault architecture itself.
Nice.
It obviously requires a higher touch from the curator. But at the end of the day, I think like you're seeing like a number of yield products come onto the market right now where they do want that HFT element.
I mean, for me, as messing around with like bridging funds and trying yield sources on different chains, I do notice that the bridging experience to be able to chase yield on another chain is not easy because there's just so many barriers of entry. Like maybe you don't have the gas token, maybe the bridge is just kind of running slow, like whatever third-party bridge provider you're using. Maybe the yield isn't as good as you thought. Maybe the yield isn't in liquid tokens. I think that's like one of the biggest things people kind of forget about in this industry is like just because you see an APR percentage doesn't mean that the reward is liquid, and that's like very common.
Yeah.
So being able to leverage a high-speed chain, the best comparison that I can make is just farming within the chain. Because once you start talking about bridges and going to other chains, then the experience is already kind of getting diluted. But I can say that if you're on Sonic and you're deposited in one protocol as a user, and you see that there's another opportunity to make a quick trade, for example, it is so easy to just, let's say hypothetically, I'm in a position on Aave and I'm farming USDC currently, which many people are, and you should. There's good yield there. And you see an opportunity of like you've been eyeing a token, maybe it's a DEX token or a game or something on Sonic and you want to buy it. And the price is pumping or the price is dumping and you're trying to catch it in some form. I can confidently say that on Sonic, you can withdraw funds from a lending market, break an LP, or do whatever you need to get free liquid capital as fast as humanly possible, and you can execute a trade on a DEX and get those tokens in your wallet faster than any chain in existence. It is instant. So I mean, I do it often. When I see something on Aave, and I'm like, if I see something moving, I'm like, I've been eyeing this thing. The price is looking kind of good.
Yeah.
I get out quickly, and within a few seconds, I already have the token. And I'm not talking about just making a swap. I'm talking about making a withdrawal, breaking an LP, et cetera, and then making the swap. It's faster than what a DeFi was like 2 years ago, where
Yeah.
it's taken a minute or so.
Exactly, and I think the cool thing about rings is that your underlying like ETH, BTC, USD is always like earning that strong like yield on Ethereum mainnet.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got your like SC assets on Sonic, which you can then go
You can use them again.
you can go be a degen with, right? Whether that's trading on a perp dex or borrow lend. So I think the next exciting thing for rings is going to be like, okay, we've got these SC assets, we've grown the primitive now to 110 million. Okay, how do we introduce more of these like trading use cases around the SC assets on Sonic and actually lean into the strengths of the chain?
Yeah, I think building more. We tried to do that in the beginning, and it's decently well. It's like anytime when you're going to introduce a new asset, especially if it's like a yield-bearing asset or like a uniquely collateralized asset, you need to try and introduce composability, like beyond just having a circulating supply on the chain. So we've done that, and we've worked with, I think, like we've worked with Euler, we've worked with Silo, so they have like SC assets, and I think even eventually Aave will also have like a Chainlink Oracle. So it's a new thing. It takes time to get, but I think that what we're trying to do at Sonic is empower. Like what it comes down to is empowering builders. Like when Rings first approached us wanting to build it, we were like, oh, this sounds like a lot. Maybe it sounds kind of risky. And the reality of it is that they came to us with a solid plan. They came to us with you guys and said like, hey, these guys have a track record. They've been building. They have this really great tech. They're invested in, or they're raising capital from these like great partners. And we decided that, you know what, the infrastructure they're using, like Layer 0, the applications that they are deploying capital into are applications that are very trusted historically in terms of like battle tested, and they have a pretty decent amount of just common sense when it comes to using moving funds. Like I said, it's very easy in DeFi to get caught up in like the APR percentage, as we've all seen like over the past few years. But when you are delivering yield, you need to make sure that the rewards are liquid, because the users who are holding Rings assets are trusting that the capital that they're depositing into Rings, therefore Veda, is being farmed for the maximum return at the lowest amount of risk with liquid return. So far things are going really good. I think Rings will see to continue to grow.
Yeah.
And I think, well, I know it's being replicated by other chains, which is like the most sincere form of flattery.
Of course, right.
And yeah, thanks for being a part of Sonic and contributing to build something new, which no other chain has done before.
Anytime. It's been a pleasure to work with the Sonic team, and excited to see where the Rings protocol can go from here. In terms of like strategic priorities for Sonic, like where does Rings sit in that kind of mix?
I think that Rings is kind of like a experimental area, in the sense of like, it's not the core stablecoin of Sonic, but the story behind Rings is pretty simple. We had a team come that said, hey, we have this idea. And this kind of goes into what Seg was mentioning earlier and Mike. Like, you have an idea, you come to us. If the idea sounds new, automatically we're very interested, because there's a lot of recycled ideas. If the ask is reasonable and you say, hey, we need this amount of support, we're happy to provide support.
Exactly. I think we share alignment on that side of things as well. I think too many chains try to be overly credibly neutral, which is of course like a part of like the decentralized ethos. But at the end of the day, you do have to sort of, I guess, back the right teams on your chain, and then just be willing to put like resources behind them. And we like teams who come to us with like an opinionated yield product, whether like this is the problem we're trying to solve, this is how Veda fits in. Because a lot of people will approach us and be like, oh, we want a vault, we want an earned product, just because they're hot right now and the whole category's heating up.
Yeah, but then that's the other thing that we have. This is almost over, or it is over. But one last question for you, which is, how do you weigh the amount of effort you're going to put into building a vault, whether or not it's just a flash in the pan type of vibe, right? Like, maybe people are really asking to a vault for XYZ chain, but then when you're looking at it, you're like, this is not worth the man hours or the headache to do it. Like, how do you guys tell them no?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to a few factors. It's like, if we're already deployed there, we can pull off, we can like take something off the shelf from our EVM deployments already. That's like quite quickly to deploy. So there's like a relatively low developer lift if we need to, and it's already like a chain we're deployed on. But ultimately, it comes down to like total addressable market size, doing like some off-chain due diligence as well about like, is this team going to be...
Vibe check.
Yeah, it's like a vibe check essentially to be like, okay, do we back these people to attract TVL? Because that's our bottom line at the end of the day as well.
Well, I think the story here is when we meet teams that have a good vibe, that have a good network and stand-up people willing to have conversations and aren't pushy and just kind of are willing to go for the ride of going through the process of being onboarded as an application on Sonic, receiving incentives, co-marketing. If you're not pushing so hard to the point where it kind of gives red flags and you're ready to go, for the long run on Sonic, this is the result. Over 110 million TVL powered by Veda. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
And,
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for that.
Thanks.